Welcome to 8 Unedited Minutes brought to you by the National Speakers Association of Illinois. Giving a TED Talk is on many speakers and aspirational speakers' bucket list. It all starts with crafting a TED-worthy idea. I discuss how to do that in this episode with my guest, Brian Miller. Brian is the founder of Conquer the Red Dot, an elite program that teaches experts and leaders how to book, write, deliver, and leverage the talk of their dreams at a TED-style conferences. A former professional magician turned international keynote speaker on human connection with over 3.6 million views on his own TEDx talk, How to Magically Connect with Anyone, Brian brings a unique blend of entertainment and insights into the art of public speaking. We dive into topics such as the mistakes people make when choosing an idea to share and how to avoid those mistakes, the criteria for a TED Talk worthy idea, the one thing above all else that is a sign you have a TED Talk worthy idea, and more golden nuggets of advice. You're going to love this show. Thank you for making the time to do 8 Unedited Minutes for NSA Illinois, Brian. I really appreciate you making the time.
Mark, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
And we're going to talk about how to build a TED-worthy idea. Before we get into some of the strategies and the mechanics of it, why is this important to you? What's your story with that?
Well, my story is I was a full-time magician for a decade, and I enjoyed my life. But I was walking into an event one day in 2015. I'm walking through a dark parking lot, literally to go into a corporate event for the evening, and my phone rings. And when you're self-employed, I didn't know who the number. I got to answer. It might be a potential client. I pick it up on the way in. I'm like, hello. Like I'm rushed. And he's like, hi, I'm organizing a TEDx conference at the local high school. We got your name, wondering if you'd be interested in giving a TED Talk. And I freaked out because I was obsessed with TED Talk. I mean, this was the earlier days of the TED program. I've been watching these for years. It was never on my bingo card to do a TED Talk. But I would just went, I'm walking in to do a gig right now. I'd love to do that. Can we talk tomorrow? Can you call me back? He goes, sure. And he hung up. And that conversation changed my life because 6 months later, I gave my TEDx talk, How to Magically Connect with Anyone, explaining what I learned as a magician about making quick, meaningful interactions and connections with others, and how you can do that if you're not a magician in your life. And it went viral. Like 3.5 million people saw it. It went just organic viral back before you could make any. There was no tools to make this happen. It just happened. I got recognized in airports, Mark, for a minute. Like I was genuinely like quote unquote famous in a really small niche. And that transition, I started getting calls to give keynote speeches, and I had never been a speaker. They were like, "Can you do the TED Talk, but like for an hour?" And I remember thinking like, no, because I only had 14 minutes and 11 seconds to say on that topic. And I said it in the TEDx talk. I wasn't an expert on human connection. I was a magician. But the money they were offering was 3-4 times higher than being a magician. So I said yes to everything, figured out how to be a speaker. And after years of doing that, folks started reaching out to me saying, I'm going to give my first TEDx talk. You've given one of my favorite TEDx talks. Can you teach me? And so I started one by one coaching people, and apparently was good at it, eventually built a whole program around it.
So with yourself and all the coaching you've done, where's the starting point? Where's the nudge or the inkling, if you will, that an idea is actually TED worthy? What does that even look like when you're getting started?
First of all, that is such a great question, and literally almost nobody asks that question. So I want to highlight how important the question itself is that you just asked, right? Because we get the answers to the questions we ask. And so asking yourself, is my idea TED worthy, is the right question. What most people ask is, how do I get more people to know about my business? And the answer is, maybe I'll do a TED Talk, right? How do I get more authority? Maybe I'll get that red logo on my website. Wrong question, right? The right question is, do I have a TED-worthy idea? And where you want to start is, do you actually know what an idea is? In my experience, the answer is most people don't know what an idea is. They have no idea what an idea is. What most people think is they have a topic. So a topic is something like the science of balance. But if I ask, I say, what do you want to, what are you going to talk about on a tech stage? They go, the science of balance. You know that's not an idea because if I ask you, what's your idea? The science of balance is not an answer to that question. So some people go a step further and they have an issue, but an issue is not an idea. An issue is a problem in need of a solution. So science of balance is a topic. Maybe, the number one cause of death over 65 is falling. That would
Mhm.
be an issue related to the science of balance. I know this. We did this with a client earlier this year. We have an expert on balance we worked with. Also, not an idea. That's just a problem. If I say, what's your idea? You say, well, the leading cause of death over 65. You haven't answered my question. And finally, the other one is a story is not an idea. This one upsets people. A lot of people think they have a story of rags to riches, tragedy to triumph, trauma to triumph, right? They have a
Mhm.
really deep, meaningful story. They tell me their story. They're crying as they're telling, I'm crying as they're telling it to me. And I get to the end of listening and I wipe away my tear. And then I have to very awkwardly say, unfortunately, I've heard a version of that story 24 times this week already.
So what's the other side of the coin? What's a TED-worthy idea?
Right. So what you want to do is take your topic or your issue or your story, and what you want to look for is what an idea is. An idea proposes a solution and moves people to action. That's an idea. So in the case of this balance expert, you can imagine an idea sounds like this. If you don't want the last years of your life to be the worst years of your life, you should focus on balance now.
Mm.
Proposes a solution, moves people to action. I know that works because we put it on an application. She got booked at one of the most prestigious TEDx conferences in America, and her talk went viral within days of hitting YouTube.
Mhm.
So that is what you're looking for. Do you have a solution, not merely a complaint, but a solution? Can you prove that it works? When I say prove, I mean lowercase p proof. You don't need to be a first degree researcher, but you do have to have evidence that this works. A lot of people think they're going to give a TEDx talk about something they just believe really deeply. And I'm like, well, can you back that up? Do you have case studies? Have you done this with clients? No, I just think it. It's like, it's not, we're not even there. We're nowhere close to there, right? So do you have a solution that you can at least prove, lowercase p proof, works, and does it inspire action? Will somebody be inspired to do, think, or rethink something after your talk? That's the foundation of an idea.
So once you get the foundation of an idea right, how does that translate into a talk?
Yeah, so we call that one sentence, we call it the filter. We call it a filter statement. And the way that it works is it does two things. One, it gives you a North Star. Once you can say what your idea is, who it's for, and why it matters in one sentence, you now know what you're aiming at. You've got a North Star. It's really important that you're not wandering all over the place, which is what most speeches and most TEDx talks are like. They're just all over the place. Many interesting ideas, but going in all different directions. We want one idea going in one direction. That's the goal. So North Star. And second, it's a filter because you ask yourself this question. When you're thinking about putting a story into your talk, which points you're going to make? Are you going to use slides? Is it going to be funny? Is it going to be serious? Is it going to be data? All these questions you have to ask yourself. Now that you've got this one perfect sentence, for each of those things you go, does this thing I'm thinking about putting in my talk immediately and obviously support my big idea? That's why we call it a filter, because it forces you to say, nope, that doesn't immediately and obviously support this. It doesn't immediately and obviously support this. Because if it doesn't, it has no business being in a 10-minute talk.
So we have covered a lot of ground in a really short period of time. A big question for a short answer. When it comes to having a TED-worthy idea, if you were to say, at least know this one thing above all else, at least apply this to test if your idea is TED-worthy, whether it's something you said to reinforce or something you haven't mentioned yet, what one thing would you say is a sign of a TED-worthy idea?
Retellability. The gold standard for communication, this is something that a mentor of mine, a hero of mine in communication states. The gold standard is not what people think. It's not, does the person I'm talking to understand this? It's, could they tell somebody else when I'm not in the room? And would that person understand it? If you can't state your big idea in that one sentence, it's very unlikely that somebody else will know how to talk about it when you're not in the room. And if they can't do that, the idea can't spread.
Thank you so much, Brian. And if people want to find you online, where's the best place or places to go?
If you're thinking about doing a TED Talk, go to roadtothereddot.com. Take a 2-minute self-assessment, and you'll get scored on how likely it is a TEDx organizer will accept your idea. according to our criteria. If you want to connect with me on social, it's LinkedIn, Brian Miller Speaks.
Thank you again, Brian. This has been excellent. I appreciate the time.
My pleasure.
And scene.